Hi, this is Trevor Hayes. I'm from Hayes Sewing Machine Company of Wilmington, Delaware. We're going to give you some pointers on how to maintain your machine and show really that it's quite simple, but it's something we need to do on a regular basis. We're going to show you the similarity on machines over the years. We have a machine from the 1860s. This was just a regular chain stitch machine. But you have to remember, I've been in business 55 years, and when I first started, we had a lot of customers from the 1880s, so they had these machines on a regular basis. So these were quite a large part of our business back then. Then as time went on, we have this Singer from the 50s, but again, it had a bobbin case. So very much similar to what we have on your other machines. And there's different ways of threading the machines. This one, for example, the flat side of the needle goes to the left and we thread from the inside out. Berninas, and most machines today, we have the flat side of the needle, which goes to the back, and then we thread from front to back. Now, a lot of the problems we get, people are not putting the needle in correctly, don't put it up all the way, or if they put the needle in backwards, then the machine will not sew, and they would assume that they have a problem with their machine, when in reality, it was really only the needle. Before we get started, let me just show you the principle of the needle, how we use this. For example, if we look at a needle, it has a long groove that you thread from. The other side is round. It doesn't have that. And then we have the flat side of the needle, so we always thread from the opposite side of the flat needle. So now as the needle goes down into the fabric, when it comes up, it creates a loop like this. The shuttle goes through that, and that's what makes the stitch. So it's really kind of simple and basic, but what we need to do is make sure we use good quality needles and also change needles quite frequently, because needles have a tendency to get dull. And when you hear it, when you're sewing, you hear a punch, punch, punch. The needle is blunt, so it's punching a hole into the fabric, and we really don't want to do that. Now, we have some different model machines here today. For example, we have a 1945 model Bernina. And again, this was an open arm. But here's where the irony is. Here's one in 1966. And this is the model actually that I started selling when I was in college in Colorado. In fact, I sold a lot of these door to door. Here, the bobbin case that fits in this machine is the same one that fit in 1945. So things don't always get obsoleted. In fact, the bobbin case that we use today in machines is still the same 15 class bobbin case. So now, as we go over the different machines, we want to have you, when you get a machine, sit down, sew on it, and find out. Let me move this machine down. That was a heavy one, by the way. We sew, stitches are fine. We will put the regular stitching. Now say you sit down to sew, and it doesn't sound right. We get loops like this on the back. Now, right away, we would assume that there's something wrong with the machine. But look at it this way. The machine was probably fine until we sat down, and we're the factor that might be the problem here. So whenever we thread the machine, what do most people do when they want to change colors of thread? They jerk it this way. No, 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 no. We take the thread, we cut it, and pull the remainder through the eye of the needle. Thread goes in one direction. So now when we thread the machine, one hand on the thread, the other. Now we get this far. Let's turn the tension back to normal. Get this far, the thread is loose. I drop the pressure foot, the thread is tight. I know the machine will sew because the thread's in the tension. If you go to sew and you're having trouble with the thread underneath like this, stop, rethread the machine, and a lot of time the problems will solve themselves. Then as we thread the machine, we put the needle in. Again, we have the flat side of the needle here. In fact, on a lot of machines, if you look here on the front, you can actually see it hitting the screw that holds the guides. And when it hits the screw, we know the needle is at the correct height. Then when we thread the needle, here's a little tip you might, when we thread the needle, we put our finger alongside the eye of the needle, and we can actually, our finger outlines the eye of the needle, so it's very easy to thread the needle. Once we do that, now we want to put the bobbin in the bobbin case. Make sure the bobbin case is clean inside. We have the thread coming off clockwise. There's a slit in the bobbin case. We come up underneath. It's between the two guides here. To see whether we have it right, it'll hold itself like this. If I jerk it, it'll move a fraction. If for some reason, for example, I threaded it up and the bobbin went down like that, we know the machine cannot sew because it needs tension on the bobbin case. Now here's the thing that's different. The screw here, this is controlling the top thread. The top tension controls the bottom thread, and I will illustrate that for you. Turn the wheel 1 revolution, pull the thread up, and I always like to pull the thread to the side. Then we have the side of the foot holding the thread when we get started. You can see how nice the stitches are there. Now I'm going to take the thread out of the tension. See this? Now we can assume there's something happened to the machine, but that's not realistic. Who's the variable in this whole thing? Me. So rather than having this happen, say, oh, I better call Mr. Hayes, say, well, let me just try rethreading the machine. And when we're using the thread, make sure we use a good quality thread. We handle Mettler and Joanne Fabrics. They handle Gutermann. These are both European threads, and they're good quality threads. It's kind of interesting. I get people bring their machines in threaded up, and the thread is on an old wood spool. We know that was from the 50s. Seriously, is that thread going to be of any value? Are you going to spend your time making something and then putting cheap thread to hold it together? No. For example, if I'm going to paint the roof of my house, do I look for cheap paint? No, I look for the best paint possible, because the cost is in the labor to do that. And also, when we sew, we spend a lot of time and effort, don't we, doing this. So we want whatever we made to stay together, like all the quilts that we have hanging around here. These will last for decades. It's the same way with the sewing machine. If we take the extra time, make sure everything is just so, we know that whenever we go to choose stitches, things will work out well. Now, I had a machine yesterday that it sewed great on straight stitch, but the woman, all of a sudden, she wanted to zigzag. It hadn't zigzagged for 30 years. So the parts inside just were frozen. So I took it on the workbench, I took it out, I lubricated the machine, kept running it. Eventually, all the parts started moving again. And what we need to do with the sewing machine, every 6 months or so, take it out, put it on zigzag. Over here on this machine, we have a list of different stitches. Let's go to D, which is a serpentine stitch. Stitch length, I'm going to shorten up. Now the needle sews back and forth. Inside, the parts are moving back and forth. Now I'm going to go to the stretch stitch, or SS in this case. We look down. Now the machine is going to go forward and reverse, and all the parts inside are moving. Now we went from this stitch to that stitch. Let's go over to F. We'll do it on the stretch stitch. But again, from a mechanic's perspective, the nice thing we like about it, all the parts are moving inside. That means your machine is being used. If you use it once every 6 months for a straight stitch, that really doesn't count as far as the machine is concerned. Now I go back to regular stitch length. And now we have the non-stretch version of that stitch. I think if a person would take their machine out, again, every 6 months and just run it, you can say, well, I don't have time, put a brick on the foot control and let the machine run so it'll stay active. It's like we ourselves. If we do not continue to run, one day we won't be able to run because the body has to be in rhythm. And it's the same way with the sewing machine or other things in our lives. So here we have the machine is sewing fine. Now, everything has to be maintained. So now we're going to show you how we take the bobbin case out. Loosen, loosen. The cover comes off. The hook comes out. And every so often you should clean inside here. It doesn't take long for things to materialize. Now we loosen these two screws and we take the needle plate off. Now, every sewing machine, you have the ability to do this because this is where lint collects. It gets in here between the feed dogs. And I get numerous machines that come in. It is so impacted here that the feed dogs can't come up through the plate. So as a result, people say, well, the machine does not feed anymore. Well, we tell people the machine would like to feed, and if you would actually clean that lint out, then it would now again be able to. So then we put the plate back on. If you go like this, you can feel this when the needle's in the high position. The feed dogs are up at their high position. If you can feel them here, we know that they will grab a hold of the fabric. If you cannot feel that, well, they will not feed, and this is where I have to, when you bring it for service, I go inside the machine and raise the feed dogs to the appropriate height. Now we put the screws back in. Tighten them up. I'm going to tilt the machine back so we can see. This is the shuttle driver. This is the shuttle. This is a half a circle. And then before we do that, we put some oil here in the track, because that's where the shuttle is going to ride back and forth in the track, and you'll just know the machine will be much quieter. Put the race cap cover in, and here's where people make a mistake. They go like that. Well, that isn't quite good enough. See that clip? We have to move it until it locks in. Then everything is safe and secure. So you won't have any problems. And I'm just going to, the foot snaps on. Again, check the bobbin case. This is where sometimes you should, maybe if you use a lot of different weight threads, invest and buy another bobbin case. Because then you can fiddle with that one so you make the tension correct on it and you don't mess up with the one that normally is with the machine. There's a notch where it fits in. I'm going to go down slow here. Top thread coming down around. Pull the thread up. pull the thread. You can either go to the left or right. Some people pull the thread out the back. But if we know some feet, for embroidery feet, it's an opening in the back of the foot. So what happens, there's nothing to hold the thread. Here, when we put the thread to the side, we actually have the thread being held by the foot, and you will never get that jamming when you first start, which a lot of people complain about. And away we go. Whenever you rewind the bobbin, push it over. We don't want the needle going up and down. We pull the balance wheel. Now it disconnects the rest of the machine. Now we can just rewind the bobbin. Now that's true on this machine. You go there, and this one we loosen the wheel, and then you can run the machine and the needle will not go up and down. Even the same on this machine. So you can see over the years machines have not really changed a lot. Then we have ones like this baby lock here. A little different design, but it's either a bobbin case or, in this case, the bobbin case sits in a pocket. Here again, we take the screws off, loosen out, clean the needle plate in the feed dogs. We lubricate inside the machine here. And one of the most important spots, a lot of time you get the machine, it really sounds rough. But right here, where at the end of my screwdriver, is a little where the bobbin case fits in. Put a drop of oil on that track right there. Put the bobbin case in, and you'll notice instantly when you run, the machine goes quiet because there's no friction here. You figure this is where all the action is, all the lint and the dirt and what have you. And I'd hate to tell you, when I take the covers off machines that come in that haven't been serviced for 20 years, I can get a handful of lint and dirt from the machine. And the woman wonders why it's noisy. Well, it's because of all this the lint and stuff. Now, when we put the cover back on, I want to put the bobbin case in. And usually on the machines, they have a little map right here that tells you how to put this in. So the bobbin goes in. It turns counterclockwise. I put my pinky on this, there, down, cuts, and then we can go ahead and sew. So you can see how they greatly simplified this machine. Now I want to change colors of thread. Again, I cut there, pull the remainder through the eye of the needle. That way we know we won't be getting any debris inside. Hold the spool down, up. It's nice and loose. Is the thread in tension? Well, when I drop the foot, it's tight. I know that I'm okay. If I did not have the thread in tension, you would get this ball of thread underneath. So it's always a good sign of when things you're done that are right or wrong. This machine is nice because it has a needle threader. I don't have to put my finger down to say it threads it by itself. And then here, every so often, on all these machines, we want to pick one of the stitches, let the machine run a bit. This has numerous buttonholes, different stretch stitches. So it has actually over 80 stitches on this machine. This basic baby lock here had 3, 6, 12 stitches with a buttonhole. This Bernina here had 20 stitches on it. This is back in 1966. And then here we had just a basic straight stitch in zigzag. But you can see the bobbin case, the bobbin case, the bobbin case is pretty much the same on all machines. Here we had the newer ones have a drop-in bobbin, drop in the bobbin, go through these procedures, and the machine will automatically sew. So if you are sewing and you have any questions, all you need to do is give us a call, let us know what your question is. A lot of times we can help you over the phone. So again, thank you very much for your kind attention.